Exactly 40 years have passed since the main character came into this world. At the first level, he began his journey without a penny in his pocket, and only the zeal to become the best helped him survive time after time. But today was the day when it was time for this journey to end, because today he intended to destroy the Demon Lord. The main character and his team were resting in a crevice before the next upcoming test, when a woman's voice was heard from somewhere above. As it turned out, this voice belonged to Lady Gaia, who expressed her belief that the party members would undoubtedly defeat the Demon Lord. Sharply and very angry, the main character Sung Woo enveloped Gaia with an angry gaze and began to shout at her because she had already given excellent abilities and weapons to all party members except Sung Woo. While the lady was looking for an excuse for herself that she had less and less strength, Sung Woo was already taking out a katana from its sheath, but was stopped in time by another warrior. To get out of the awkward situation, the lady decided to reward the great warriors for their work and asked what each of them wanted. The first to announce that he wanted to quickly move to the next battlefield was a guy with green skin, who had recently stopped Sung Woo. The second person who said that he already had wonderful colleagues and a memorable journey and, in principle, nothing more was needed was a fair-haired guy, a knight. Deciding that the knight was now sucking up to the goddess, Sung Woo pulled him by the cheek and began to mock how the guy might not be ashamed. In order not to waste time, the elf shooter in a calm tone asked for the right to move to any dimension and the ability to use weapons. Gaia immediately agreed with ensuring the right to move, but she had doubts about weapons and asked the reason for such a desire. The elf immediately changed his face and, taking a graceful pose, began ranting about the importance of the revolution for the alienated races, and also demanded bamboo peaks. Finally disappointed in what was happening, Gaia covered her forehead with her hand and asked what Sung Woo wanted. He actually thought about what he wanted, because he has plenty of money and various things, but fame and honor do not make sense because you can always get it that way. Since the gentleman is already at level 255, moving through dimensions and conquering the world are also available to him. He is completely confused about what his heart still desires. Suddenly he found himself in the past, where he was only at the first level, and remembered how he was constantly hungry. The goddess tried to push Sun Woo so that he would finally come away from his thoughts and say his wish. Standing up impressively, Sun Woo resolutely said that he wanted to return to his homeland and open his own diner to distribute the food of earthlings in his native land. With the appearance of gates and monsters, nothing remained of the prosperous city of Seoul, where at dawn the light still glows in the windows of houses, except its name. Baek Kan-hyuk and his colleague observed the situation in Seoul from the roof of a multi-story building. The topic of their conversation was the lack of need to take on gates of this level, because they themselves would close very soon. What was strange was that nothing much had happened in the gate area for the past 4 days due to too many monsters. Baek Kan-hyuk pointed out to his partner the suspicious behavior of one of the monsters, who was behaving as if he was running away from a predatory pursuer. Some new monster boss would appear soon. With a request to abstain from smoking, the girl jokingly pushed Mr. Beck at the same time as the rain began, the first drop of which put out the cigarette. The enraged gentleman threw away the cigarette butt and walked towards the stairs, saying that if Min thought so, then the raid on the boss would begin very soon, and asked to tell him about the leave he had just taken for 1 or 2 days. When asked by the lady where he was going to go so late at night, he just grinned and said that he was going to generously reward his stomach, tired from the night shift. Having exclaimed the decision to go to the eatery, the gentleman stood in a spectacular pose and pointed his finger at the building opposite. With thoughts of how every bite of the dish would be eaten by the master and relieve him of stress and fatigue, Baek Kan-hyuk walked to the door and saw a sign that said that the establishment was closed. Looking at her, he just grinned, saying, "Where has it been seen that only one such small sign would block the path of the very master of the First Order, Baek Kan-hyuk?" And clenching the hand holding the sign into a fist, he broke the sign into 2 parts. Opening the door and briskly entering the premises, he came across Mr. Sung Woo, calmly drawing up a plan for the flourishing of the eatery's business. Sitting down at the bar with a malicious smile on his face, Mr. Beck demanded something tasty from the owner. At first, Sung Woo was angry with the guest because his plans to watch a movie were disrupted, but he soon noticed his thinness and decided that his guest was a poor kid who had not eaten for a long time. Mr. Beck, seeing the owner's pitying look, instantly became angry and began to prove his title of the First Order, but quickly switched to reproaches for ignoring him. When choosing the ingredients for a delicious dish, the eye fell on a piece of red dragon meat, which is located between its long neck and wing in the area of the shoulder joint, in comparison similar to the tenderloin from the cheek of a pig. The reason for the rather strong and bright taste of the flame was the spirit of fire, which fills every part of the piece of meat, and to add even more sophistication to the taste, you should pour fruit juice over the meat. Hearing a certain scream, Baek Kan Hyuk, perplexed as to whether a piece of meat really screamed, asked Sung-woo about it. In response, Sung-woo smiled and said that Baek was just imagining it and continued working on the meat. Some spices, vegetables and the finished dish are already on the table right in front of Baek Kan Hyuk. Having carefully examined the contents of the plate up and down, Mr. Baek reluctantly admitted the excellent level of Sung-woo's flambé preparation. The faint aroma of fruit, the smell of burnt fat, and the perfect roasting seemed to shout that a Reyes steak could not be tasteless. Having licked his lips, Mr. Baek Kan Hyuk began to cut the steak, but after several unsuccessful attempts, exhausted, he turned to Sung-woo for help. As soon as the owner kindly took the plate to cut himself, the thought flashed through his mind that this steak deserved not to be cut, because it was the meat of Kalius, the red dragon that had existed for 1800 years, the right hand of the demon lord. Having finally made the first cut, Sung-woo looked at Baek Kan Hyuk with a smile, hearing him make excuses such as the fact that before this the meat clearly resisted the knife very much. Mr. Baek, in anticipation, placed the first piece and immediately regretted it, because a second later tongues of flame flew out of his mouth, and the dish itself, in principle, was disgustingly tasteless. And Sung-woo, in response, was very happy that he was able to cook a tasteless dish, explaining that food from the Terra kitchen is food that is eaten for effect, and also to fill up. For some reason, Mr. Baek Kan Hyuk could not even spit out this tasteless piece of meat, and he did not have the strength to hold on until the last due to the very high temperature of the piece, so he had no option but to swallow this unfortunate piece. As soon as the lump of saliva went down, it became very, very hot inside the gentleman's body, and unable to bear it, the gentleman fell exhausted to the floor. An hour later, Baek Kan Hyuk woke up and saw a yawning Sung-woo sitting on the sofa in front of him. Angry and deciding that Sung-woo was a crazy cook luring people with food, Baek Kan Hyuk quickly jumped up and tried to kick Sung-woo in the head with a swing. The same one stopped him with the words that he was disappointed in Mr. Baek's frailty, because even after eating that dish he was not capable of more. Angry this time at Sung-woo's words about his weakness, Baek Kan Hyuk, saying that he was in the first order, again swung his hand at the cook, but this time with his hand. Without having time to touch the face of Sung-woo, Mr. Baek found himself already on the other side of the room due to the powerful click that Sung-woo gave him, without straining at all. With dissatisfaction, Sung-woo called Baek Kan Hyuk a very stubborn fan of waving his fists regardless of the situation, and left him resting where he fell from the click, while he reached into his pocket for his phone. Mr. Baek always said that he was a member of the First Order, but he never said what that meant. The phone showed information that the First Order is the 100 strongest hunters in the world, to which Sung-woo was very surprised how such a weakling was among the 100 best hunters on Earth. After Mr. Baek woke up, he began to bow to Mr. Sung-woo and asked to accept his apology for what he had done, to which Sung-woo rolled his eyes with the words that Baek Kan Hyuk immediately began to bow as soon as he overcame himself, and that it was funny, because in others Mr. Baek doesn't do that in stores. Putting a mug of coffee on the table, Sung-woo told Mr. Baek that he would make a man out of him, and that in addition to transferring skills and knowledge, training implies guiding a person on the right path, and also teaches him to become necessary. So Mr. Sung-woo is going to train Mr. Baek. Without giving him the opportunity to choose whether he wanted to begin training at all, Mr. Sung-woo immediately proceeded to the first human wisdom of humanity. And humane is the one who has a feeling of love, who is able to sympathize with others and express compassion to those who really need it. With blood pouring from his ears, Baek Kan Hyuk decided in his mind that the talkative Sung-woo could play Sonata No. 14 Part 3 with his tongue. Mr. Baek asked Sung-woo if he had ever been a school teacher, to which he received a positive answer, adding that the subject taught was ethics in praise of intuition. After clapping his hands, Mr. Sung-woo spoke about his decision to talk about the value of food, to which Baek Kan Hyuk became angry and pointed at the Reyes steak, asked how this chemical weapon can be called food. Sung-woo scolded Baek Kan Hyuk with contempt, and condescension for the fact that he even dared to speak out like that about a dish that another was poring over. He pointed out that this is the moral behavior of an individual. Holding a plate of steak, Baek Kan-hyuk with a protruding forehead then asked Sung-woo if he really wanted Mr. Baek to eat the whole dish, to which he received a positive answer. With tears in his eyes, Baek Kan-hyuk said that he does not want and will not eat this steak, and Sung-woo smiled and encouraged him that when Baek eats, he will feel better. Baek Kan-hyuk swung the plate with the dish and was about to throw it on the floor, but Sung-woo stopped him by grabbing his hand and asking if there was something that Baek Kan-hyuk would be ashamed to say in front of the person who prepared it. Baek Kan-hyuk shouted the word no at the same time as Sung-woo shouted the word yes, and a second later the steak on the plate was already on the face of Mr. Baek, who then immediately fainted. Mr. Sung-woo, holding Baek Kan-hyuk's legs by the ankles, thought that when he woke up, he would vomit or make a scene about gastric lavage. Sighing heavily and starting to drag the master, Sung-woo firmly said that Baek's stomach would definitely digest this, and since Baek Kan-hyuk ate the strengthening dish and could easily smash anyone, Sung-woo decided to leave him in the basement for a while. Meanwhile, at Baek Kan-hyuk's headquarters, his colleague was worried that for the second day there had been no word from him. She believed that Mr. Baek could not be kidnapped, arrested or captured, and the leader of the support team from the Second Order, Min O'Keefe, added that maybe he got into trouble and was hiding. Another difficulty was that there was only one day left before the boss appeared. Mr. Min angrily wiped the sweat from his forehead and told his colleague that Baek was only a headache and that the colleague should prepare for the fact that Min O'Keefe would bring Baek. As soon as Min went outside, he thought that he was looking for the impudent Baek, but his abilities had long been running out. Squatting down, Mr. Ming successfully used his powers and found Baek. Standing at the locked door of the diner, Sung-woo Min O'Keefe was at a loss as to what Mr. Baek could have forgotten here. Opening the door with a master key, he carefully entered the building and immediately sensed that Baek Kan-hyuk was in the basement. While Min was thinking about how to get to Baek, Sung-woo appeared behind him, asking if Min knew that this was a violation of the law. Mr. Min was in a stupor, and Sung-woo came closer and smiled and asked if this was self-defense. While Baek Kan-hyuk was in the basement, with his last strength, breaking stones with a pickaxe and looking for something in them, Min O'Keefe was already going down to him. The joyful Mr. Baek was delighted with the arrival of Min. He said that he believed that Min would come and save him. He knew. He ran up to him and took him by the hand with the question of how they could get out of here as quickly as possible. But Min silently looked at him with bruises under his eyes and sternly walked towards the very stones over which Baek was puffing, and taking a pickaxe he set to work, explaining that he, too, had been caught. After hard work with the stones, both tiredly sat down on the floor and then Min asked what he was doing now, and Baek misunderstood his question and was surprised at how Min still did not understand that they were expanding the basement. Because of this, Mr. Min got angry and began to shout at Baek, why did he even get to the bottom of such a monster, to which Baek, sighing heavily, admitted that he, too, did not know that Sung-woo was so strong, as if returned. Sitting down, Baek asked Min, who was holding his sore lower back, asked what he thought about Sung-woo's strength when he saw this monster with the help of his abilities. Looking up at Baek, Min replied that yes, he saw that Mr. Sung-woo ranks 6th in the First Order, is a noble warrior, a Haken. Starting to get up, he continued that this guy is level 85, so he is part of a completely different league, and Mr. Baek admired Sung-woo and called him the greatest of all time. Taking a pickaxe and swinging it, Min O'Keefe said that he just wanted more rest to break the skull of idiot Baek for angering such a monster, and Baek Kan-hyuk grabbed the pickaxe at the moment when it was already a millimeter from Baek's forehead, saying that this was exactly what served the reason Baek works tirelessly to preserve Ming's weak share. Putting the pick on his shoulder, Baek said that there were more serious problems, because there was a possibility that a boss would appear soon, and if they got stuck here, something bad would obviously happen. Min confirmed his seriousness, because he and Baek are the best in Sector A, and also suggested that they go apologize to Sung-woo. Much to their surprise, Sung-woo actually just told them in a calm tone that they could go. While wiping his hands, Mr. Sung-woo asked about the reality of Min O'Keefe being a sniper, to which Min was shocked that where Sung could have obtained such information and received an answer to his question from a site with information on the internet. Adjusting the apron on his belt, Mr. Sung mentioned that although it is not polite to let customers in before the eatery opens, it is possible to treat Min and Beck with one dish. Beck's response was to knock on the table and say that he didn't want to eat the tasteless food Sungwoo had prepared. Sungwoo said that he assumed this and asked what dish Mr. Beck wanted, tasty or tasteless. Beck Kang-hyuk joyfully shouted that, of course, he chose the tasty one, and Min O'Keefe, in doubt about a possible trick, chose the tasteless one. While Sungwoo was preparing fried salmon in foil for Mr. Beck, Min silently looked at him with admiration, and when asked by Beck Kang-hyuk about why Min O'Keefe chose a tasteless dish, Min only said that he was already a little regretting his choice, because the dish looks quite appetizing for Beck. Watching the preparation in fascination, Mr. Min noticed that even though Beck couldn't see, Sungwoo was adjusting his magic, pouring salt on the fillet and sprinkling more liquor. Ming also appreciated the cook's ability to eliminate the smell of food in one go, and found it amazing. After wrapping the salmon in foil and placing it in the frying pan, Sungwoo covered it with a lid and said that all that was left was to wait until the food was ready. Turning to face Min, the son asked about the client's kidney problems, and he confirmed and added that he also had gastritis. Sungwoo is disappointed that due to health problems, Min O'Keefe is unable to maintain his fighting power. Beck laughed and began to tease his colleague that after a fight, Min gets tired quickly, and at that time Sungwoo was already starting to prepare the so-called dish for the sick. Thinking that the most famous diet food is porridge, Beck patted Ming on the shoulder with ridicule that his colleague would have to eat tasteless porridge. Shouting that the dish was ready, the son put it on the table right in front of Beck, and he, with sparkling eyes, said that this dish was simply a masterpiece, and Min looked on enviously from the sidelines. Carefully breaking off a small piece of salmon with chopsticks and putting it in his mouth, Beck instantly felt heavenly pleasure from the wonderful taste, and, starting to joyfully knock on the table, screamed and said about the divine taste of the fish, and wondered why a person who could cook such wonderful dishes cooks tasteless. Saying that preparing tasteless food is just his hobby, Sungwoo served the sauce to Beck, and when he again screamed in delight about the divinity of the taste, Sungwoo asked him not to talk with his mouth full. While Sungwoo was just starting to cook, Min O'Keefe decided that he had to find out why Sungwoo serves tasteless dishes, and in order to find out what their true purpose is, Min is ready to eat this disgusting dish. Sungwoo placed a plate of turquoise-colored food in front of Min, saying that even though it wasn't very tasty, Min wouldn't try it anywhere else. Colleagues looked at the contents of the plate with unpleasant surprise, and to Min's question about adding uranium, Sungwoo replied that he did not add such a thing, and this was followed by a question from Mr. Beck, but about the presence of energy drinks and the reasons for this color. While Beck was thinking that such food was dangerous to eat, Min, carefully examining the dish, found out that this was the movement of magic, which means this dish had an effect similar to a healing potion. Looking up at the cook, he admired in his thoughts that Sungwoo had cooked it here, because even a professional couldn't keep the magic in such a pure form. Having put down the spoon, Mr. Min was just about to ask something from the son, and he put his index finger to his lips, as if asking for silence. Thinking that, be that as it may, by eating this brew he would get better, he ate one spoon, feeling the healing as strongly as the disgusting taste of the dish with a chewy consistency. Min decided that if he wanted to feel good, then he needed to eat through force, and with the words that those who do not take risks do not drink champagne, began to put spoons one after another. About half an hour later, Baek Kan-hyuk, cleaning the spaces between his teeth with a salmon toothpick, continued to idolize Sungwoo's food and, looking at Min sitting contentedly on a chair, began to ask him if everything was okay with him. And Min at this time was happy that the kidney removed due to injury was regenerated and the magical power also returned. Thinking that he had not felt such peace for a long time, Min carefully stood up from his chair and bowed to his son with words of gratitude, and that he would never forget his kindness. Baek Kan-hyuk was shocked by what was happening and by the atmosphere, and deciding that this would somehow help in understanding the situation, he asked for another plate of salmon, and another, and another. Having swallowed the contents of the last, 20th plate, Mr. Beck leaned back in his chair and began stroking his full belly, and Min at this time asked his son if he could help them if suddenly a monster boss appeared from the gate tomorrow. The son was just thinking, and Beck had already managed to hug Min and, pointing to the owner of the eatery, said that Sungwoo had returned, and although he was very strong, this was not a reason to fight for them, because if he wanted to fight, he would have said so in advance, and, with a wink at the son, temporarily ended his monologue with the question that the son would not want to interfere for their sake. But he immediately continued it, saying that if the owner intervenes, then the work will become even easier and Beck and Min will miss the opportunity to become stronger on their own. Raising his fist up and getting up from his chair, Beck said that this makes sense, because he and Min themselves will gain strength and overcome all difficulties. Sung-woo admired Beck's speeches, unlike Min, who believes that Beck is talking complete nonsense, and that if a teacher is in a raid on a boss monster, then the Hunters Association will find out about it, and then the teacher will become the first in the first order. Poking his finger at Beck's forehead, Min continued, saying that from the 100th place Beck would be pushed out to the 101st, and therefore would be deprived of his cloak. While Sung-woo silently looked at them, Min O'Keefe looked at the owner, pointing at Beck and calling him an idiot, and the son, in turn, said that he definitely needs to make a real. Rising from the table, Mr. Min, talking to Sung-woo, said that in this case they would no longer bother him and called Beck Kan-hyuk with him. Sung-woo, leaning on the bar counter, with a smile on his face, asked his departing colleagues to come to the eatery more often and expressed his readiness to serve them at any time. Finally, the son added, turning to Mr. Beck, a request to see each other more often, to which he received a sarcastic phrase about Beck's reluctance and the sound of a slamming door. On the way to the headquarters, Min began the dialogue by saying that he believes that no matter what the situation, eating 20 servings just because they are free is a disgusting and low act. Beck Kan-hyuk got angry and ordered Min to shut up, calling him an eater of stinking porridge, and Min with a smirk on his face and his thoughts repeated Beck's last two words and, thinking that someday Beck will understand what chance slipped through his fingers today, and silently moved on. The next day, raid on the boss, standing on the roof, Min looked up and, seeing his team's helicopter, turned to Kan-hyuk with the information received, and they both simultaneously jumped from the roof, ready to attack the boss. The news anchor went on to say that as a result of this, the government of the Republic of Korea decided to award medals to all members of the team, and it was also interesting that superstar Beck having bitten off half of the sandwich. Sung-woo expressed his joy for the good work of his comrades, and with a small chuckle, Sung-woo admitted that the gates had opened with his arrival, since during the movement the impressionable monsters sensed danger and jumped out. And raising the mug to his mouth, with a smile on his face, the son said that since this is the situation, he hopes that Beck and Min will take care of the world, calling them respected hunters. Stretching, the son said that there was a week left before the opening, and going to the window to see the beauty of today, he asked himself if he would also prepare today. Seeing a cat walking in the window with a box, the son went to open the door for the guest, and the cat, lifting the box with its paws, said that it was a package. Standing near the chair, the cat raised his paw asking if he could sit on the chair and received a positive answer from the owner. This cute four-legged friend is called Aluros. Although he has a cat-like appearance and habits, he is very smart and intelligent, good at cooking due to the fact that he has more taste cells than a person, as well as his sense of smell, hearing and other senses excellent. Sung-woo, looking at the fluffy one with tenderness, thought about how much they like to take care of others, for example, an errand cat, a military doctor and much more, because in fact, they are the best support for a warrior. But because of excessive care, a warrior turns into a lazy pig. Because of too much laziness, they refuse the honor of being a warrior. That is why the Aluros were called cats that destroyed brave warriors. While the warriors were competing over whose Aluros was cuter, Sung-woo, while still a soldier, desperately wanted only this. But while he begged Lady Gaia to send him Aluros, Gaia had no time for him. Sung-woo, moving away from the memories, looked at Aluros and told him that now he is not a warrior, but the owner of a diner, and that if cat hair flies here, he will not be able to trade. Aluros cheerfully answered the owner that he does not shed and offered to check it himself by pulling the fur, and Sung-woo independently convinced himself of the authenticity of Aluros's words. Aluros lay down on the bar counter, and Sung-woo began to stroke him and asked the fluffy one about how he got here, and the answer was that he defeated the cat god and now he is here. Excitedly standing in front of the cat god, sitting mightily on a throne of gold, Aluros begged him as best he could, but in response he only heard that that guy, who is also Sung-woo, is very dangerous. The cat god continued, saying that Aluros simply does not understand what danger the sun poses, so he sheds tears, and Aluros was invariably convinced that Mr. Sung-woo is still cool, and since he is a fallen angel, that means he is many times better than ordinary. Sitting at the roots of the tree, the Aluros was worried about why he couldn't just meet the warrior. But suddenly it seemed to dawn on him, and, jumping up on his hind legs, the Aluros decided that the fact was that he was simply not suitable for them due to the fact that his abilities are not enough. From that day on, Aluros began to train diligently, gaining strength and wisdom, only to finally become Aluros, a brave warrior. Sun Wu looked at the cat after his story and asked, "They say, it turns out that Aluros, having trained Aluros, simply beat the cat god, because he did not want to send him to the warrior," to which he received a confirming answer from a proud cat. Smiling, Sun Wu thought that he seemed to know why Renato sent Aluros to him, and that such a rich smell of an idiot that he only felt from his former colleagues of the region, and Teo also emanated from this furry little guy. While the cat was showing off his well-practiced skills and techniques, Sun Wu recalled that he had already resigned, but touched by the drawn-out meow of the Aluros, he offered an alternative option as an employee, to which the furry one readily agreed. At this time, two men were watching from afar behind the diner building with binoculars, hiding behind a tree nearby. Noticing that the store looked quiet, one of them said that working for oneself is tantamount to war, and the second added that this is a kind of game of confiscating the flag, that is, all new enterprises are enemies, and two at the same time said that it was time for them break the enemy. The first to notice the detail as a coffee maker on the window was Park Dalsu, the owner of a restaurant called Resin, and the second, Ote Shik, the owner of the Waner Cafe, added the fact that the coffee maker looks quite expensive. Mr. O said that apparently the owner of the eatery decided to make a diner with cafe elements, and Mr. Park admitted that this was rather arrogant towards Ote Shik. Park Dalsu said that this diner drives him crazy, and Ote Shik suggested that you first prepare properly, and only then come here again. Only moved a meter from the spot to try to escape from here, the friends were stopped by Aluros, touching the backs of the fugitives with two claws, and mistaking them for visitors, he dragged them into the building by the scruff of the neck. Mr. O whispered that this talking cat might be a monster, and the Aluros passing by Nabi refuted his assumption, and called himself a trained prisoner. Considering this to be quite good, and wanting to show the owner of the eatery a worthy claim, Puck ran his finger across the table in the hope of finding wool, but did not find a single speck of dust. Turning their heads and seeing the perfect cleanliness and shine, the clients dragged by Nabi grabbed their heads, and with sweat on his forehead, Mr. Ote Sik excitedly spoke about the fact that even he, who violated the rules of sanitary standards only 3 times in his entire career, can't find fault with anything, and Haymaster Park Dalsu was worried that he still hadn't found a single piece of wool. Having placed a glass of water near Mr. Pack, Nabi confidently explained that he does not shed, and clients immediately began to feel his paws and think about what a cute smile he has. Scratching his chin, Ote Shik noticed that, be that as it may, the room is quite clean, and to his question about whether the businessman cleans here himself, Aluros raised his paw, answering that Nabi cleans here. Taking off his glasses and covering his eyes with his hand, Ote said that he envied the owner and also dreamed of such a cat, and Nabi had already managed to put a menu on the table, asking him to decide what the guests were going to order. Deciding that the first claim was a complete failure, Park Dalsu looked at Ote Shik and asked with a learned gesture about moving to Plan B, to which he received a positive nod and immediately ordered 2 servings of today's signature dish, and Nabi instantly ran to convey the accepted order to the cook's son W. As soon as Sung Woo tied his apron and went out into the kitchen, Ote immediately noticed the justified expectation that the owner was one of the hunters, and Park called him handsome, liked the muscles and their easy work with a heavy pan, and said that Sung Woo came straight out of a picture. Ote Shik excitedly cried out Mr. Park's name and said that, of course, he respected his preferences, but hoped that he had not forgotten the reason for their visit here, and in response to this, Park Dalsu quickly began to deny, saying that he was just him surprised the owner's abilities. A second after this, Mr. Park again stared at Sung Woo with the thought that he could not take his eyes off him, and noticed that for the first time he was observing such an interesting combination of skill, experience, equanimity with a joyful expression on his face. Puck was distracted by Nabi, who brought 2 of the ordered signature dishes, namely the mouth-watering squid top bub. Dal Su was the first to say that he could not even think that they would bring such a thing, and Tae Shik, agreeing with his friend, added that it was written that a new menu would be drawn up that day depending on the available ingredients, and Dao Su noted that since the ingredients of the dish were in front of their eyes, it would not be easy to make an allergy claim, so all that was left was to taste the dish. Park Dao-su was the first to decide to try a spoonful of the dish, and while he was chewing, Mr. O asked if it was tasty, and after he heard a positive answer from Park, he also ate one spoon, then the second, third, fourth, fifth. They both ate the contents of their plates to a single crumb, leaned back in their chairs and held their stomachs and began to reflect on the fact that this taste was different from the theme of O Tae Shik's establishment, which sells coffee and light lunch, and from the direction of Park Dao-su's restaurant, and from any a place where you can eat like at home. Pleasantly impressed by the dish, Pak and O took out their wallets, and agreeing that such eateries were wonderful, each handed a bill to Aluros. Having said goodbye to Nabi, the comrades on the way to their establishments said that sometimes they would still look into Sung-woo's eatery, and it would also be nice to present him with at least one congratulatory wreath. Nabi approached Sung-woo with a question about what kind of piece of paper he was carefully looking at, and Sung-woo handed it to Nabi, saying that this was a blacklist sent by Kang Hyuk, and on this list there were the names of 2 recent guests, that is, Park and O. Putting his fists on his sides, Sung-woo noted with a smile that Sung and Nabi managed to defeat the evil customers with one portion of top pub with squid, and Nabi, raising his paws up, said that he had always considered the brave warrior Woo the best. Raising a mug of coffee to his mouth, Sung-woo said that neighbors should always be respected, and that from the very beginning he thought not to interfere with other establishments, because it is like the cycle of the 5 elements. It is very important to exist in harmony with everyone. Standing in the center of the arena, surrounded by a huge number of onlookers, Sung-woo stood with a bloody sword directly in front of the man lying on the sand. This entire crowd of spectators added fuel to the fire with their screams and pleas to kill the opponent. However, the opponent himself, as if mocking either Sung-woo or himself, asked Sun weakly whether he could kill a man. Having made a strong swing, Sung-woo was ready to deliver a crushing blow to the enemy. The tip of the sword was already millimeters from the face of the fallen man. But in an instant the situation changed and the sword plunged deep into the sand very close to the head of the prone man. Drops of sweat flowed from Sung-woo's face onto the opponent lying under him, while Sun with burning eyes said that he would not do this anymore, because he was already sick of it, and calling his opponent a helpful dog, a gladiator, quickly stood up and walked away from him, and lumps of paper thrown in their direction, thrown by spectators dissatisfied with the show. With a loud knock, Min-oh Kif put the empty plate on the table and, wiping his mouth with a napkin, thanked Teacher Wu for the excellently prepared dish. Noticing that the son did not react in any way and was looking at the word into emptiness, Min waved his hand in front of his face to bring him to his senses, and the son woke up at that very second and apologized, explaining that he remembered something. Kif repeated his previous statement about the excellent taste of kimchi-jjigae. And when Sun asked if this was Keef's first time trying this dish, he replied that he had previously lived in America, so he was used to kimchi. Having said that the establishment was quite warm and cozy compared to the rainy weather outside, Min got up from the table and stopped abruptly, saying that he remembered that around the weekend an employee of the mayor's office would come to the diner to check the real status. Sung-woo asked what Kif's last words meant about the real state of affairs, and Min gave details that they needed to know whether Aluros was capable of receiving guests, whether it harmed civilians and whether it posed a danger. Sung-woo asked Kif how he knew and told Sung about ways to help the returnees, and Min laughed and said there were instructions. After petting Nabi, Min stood up and said that those returned are also victims of the gate incident, so they react properly, because there are many cases of their unexpected arrival on this day, and Sung-woo smiled and praised Min. When Min left, the son thought about the possibility that the inspector who was supposed to come that day might also be returned and hoped that today everything would definitely go without incident. An unfamiliar fair-haired guy approached Nabi, who was sweeping fallen leaves not far from the diner, so unexpectedly that Nabi jumped in fright, and when he landed, he hit the guy on the back of the head with a broom so that he would not do that again, and said that he sensed his presence. The guy stepped back a little and apologized, explaining the nature of his work, asked how much Nabi was scared and, scratching the back of his head, said that he was so glad to see Aluros that he acted rashly. Nabi was a little shocked that this man knew about the existence of the Aluros, and the stranger said that he had once aspired to become a warrior. The stranger asked if Nabi was working now, and he, looking sadly at the front door, remembered that when the owner was busy watching a movie, he should never be disturbed. Nabi, with the same sad face, looked at the stranger and, asking for forgiveness, said that the establishment was already closing. But seeing the guy's tired, sad face, Nabi said with a smile that if he was very hungry, then Aluros was ready to personally cook something for the guy. The stranger's mood instantly changed, and with a huge smile on his face, he said that he would be most happy to try a dish from Aluros. The guy said that he would like to eat kimchi, and Nabi, with a cold sweat on his forehead, was anticipating how he would prepare this dish, because it would be difficult for a cat's tongue to taste soy sauce. Nabi brought a stool into the kitchen to reach the table and first began to prepare a rich broth from pork ham. Leaning his head on his paw, Nabi sighed with the words that everything simple ends with broth, and with a slightly frightened look he looked at the 3 standing glasses filled with salt, sugar and salted shrimp, with the understanding that he did not know how to prepare the sauce at all. Wiping the sweat from his forehead after pouring the contents of all the glasses into the pan with the broth, Nabi remembered the highlight of the program and added the onion baton as the cherry on the cake. Having placed a plate of kimchi jjigae on the table in front of an unfamiliar client, a tired Nabi fell near the table. The guy looked at his dish and noticed that it looked more like kimchi porridge, but still praised Nabi, because he still tried. Suddenly, Some Wu came out of the door that had just opened and was taken aback when he saw the stranger, because he did not particularly look like a standard guest, and Nabi, curled up in a ball at the bar counter, made it clear that this guest had arrived from Terra. The guest apologized and said that he had returned. His name was Park Sung-han, and Some Wu looked at him with the same haggard face as Min's and thought that, apparently, being in Terra, he had done a great job. With a smile, swallowing the lump in his throat, and straightening his apron, Some Wu said that he understood the situation Song Han was in now and asked if he wanted to eat kimchi jjigae. Mr. Song turned to the owner of the eatery, and said that working hours had already ended and he did not want to inconvenience anyone. Some Wu, in turn, leaning on the back of a nearby chair, explained that he considers this business his hobby, so we can assume that the establishment is open. Smiling, the son said that in return he would eat what Aluros had prepared and went to the kitchen area with the thoughts that this was the first meal of the returnee and should be taken with complete seriousness. Some Wu stood in the kitchen and while cutting the tenderloin, he thought that pork ham is not a particularly expensive product, but it should in no case be underestimated, because, despite the fact that the meat is elastic, it gives an exquisite taste. Throwing the chopped ham into the frying pan, the cook turned on the stove, saying that if you fry it, it will turn out incredibly tasty. Nabi walked to the open door to the kitchen and carefully watched the cooking process, when Some Wu noticed him with peripheral vision and invited him to his place, wanting to teach him. Stirring pieces of meat with a wooden spoon, the owner said that kimchi should be stewed in oil soaked in pork fat. Nabi, with an expression of incomprehension on his face, listened to his son talking about the fact that soybean paste is a mandatory ingredient. It is needed in order to get rid of the unpleasant smell of meat. My son noticed that it is also sometimes interrupted with alcohol, but there are those who skip this stage, and that a considerable amount of garlic is added to kimchi, which emphasizes the taste. Nabi clarified that it means that soybean paste is added when preparing for sensitive people, and Son added that adding alcohol may also be a matter of religion, and there are also cases where people put less garlic in kimchi. Nabi, with his eyes shining with joy, underlined and starred the recipe in his notebook and purred contentedly before happily saying that he finally now knows how to cook kimchi jjigae. Looking at the tray of food that had just been placed in front of him, Park Sung-han noticed that apparently he was not the only one who wanted to taste the taste of this dish. Some Wu, wiping his hands with a towel, admitted that he did not appreciate this during his life on Earth, but when he got to another world, he especially wanted to eat kimchi jjigae. Song Han enthusiastically said that he fully understood the son and, having eaten the first spoon of kimchi jjigae, it was as if for a second he was transported into the past, and with tears in his eyes from this wonderful feeling, he thought that yes, this is the very taste of the homeland. Son finished eating and, putting the spoon into an empty plate, told the son that he had been in the Terra for 13 whole years. But that was only 6 earthly years. The son thought about the fact that he had been there for 40 years, and only 9 had passed on Earth, and became convinced that in reality there was no definite pattern. Khan, raising his head and looking at the sun, declared that he was a 50th level hunter, and the sun, thinking that since this was the central figure, it turns out that Khan was a silver rank adventurer, and asked Khan to clarify his thoughts. A positive response. Song Han stood up from his chair and slowly walked to the window of the diner, saying that unlike Terra, the gate control system here is flawless. Hanging his head with a downcast gaze, Khan noticed that even more memories of Terra surfaced in his head. Sung Woo asked Han in surprise that he didn't return because he wanted to. Turning his head, Khan said that during the adventure in the dungeon he was expelled, and the son, still in shock, asked what was happening. It was not a deliberate return, but an expulsion. Raising his hand to his chin, Sung Woo said that it was incredible luck that among the many dimensions, Sun was sent into exile on Earth. The dream hesitated a little and confirmed that this, of course, was still a miracle. The son, sighing heavily, accepted the clarity that Mr. Song Han was at home, and he said that he had a loving wife who was waiting for him, and Aluros, and that 13 years was enough for another place to become home. At that same second, Sun fell to his knees and tears flowed from his eyes. Nabi immediately ran up to calm him down, and Sun thought about how to rectify the situation and asked him if he wanted to return there. Song instantly turned to Sun and asked again about what Mr. Wu had just said. He again asked if he should send Song Han to Terra, and Khan, with his eyes burning with joy, rose to his feet and, leaning on the table, shouted that he dreams of returning there, and he will be very grateful if the son does this for him. Sung Woo, saying that it was nice to meet you, clenched his hand into a fist, and at that very second a blue portal opened under Han, into which he, of course, fell. As soon as the portal closed, Sung Woo, dusting off his hands, explained that he did not like to see people crying. Nabi, approaching the bar on the other side of the sun, asked why he did this. Because if the sun was careless about his ability to move through dimensions, this would not end well. Sung Woo turned away, covered his ears with his fingers, and said that since Song himself wanted this, then his wish had to be fulfilled, and what he would do next was his problem. Nabi said that he was sure that the sun sent Khan to Terra only because he was tired of him. Sung Woo went towards his personal room and told Aluros that in any case he did a great job, but now they are definitely closing. And Nabi took the tray with the food he had prepared and said that he would take this failed dish to the pudding shop in the basement slime, to which the son snatched the tray from Nabi's paws with the words that he would eat this dish himself. A man in grey armor with a red cloth approached Sung Woo, who was sitting behind bars, asking if Sung Woo knew that 200 days had already passed since he arrived here. The son raised his head and exhaustedly turned to June with the fact that he could not remember this. June waved his hand at the tray that turned out to be near the son, saying that it was a gift, and when the son asked where June got it, he replied that he bought it for a copper coin from a man who has an ingredient called kimchi, which he keeps in his property. Laughing at the idea of someone taking kimchi as property, Sung lifted the lid of the plate and confusedly told June that it looked more like kimchi porridge than kimchi chaj. June grabbed his head with words about what it meant to be tricked, and the son still thanked him, saying that he also wanted to eat this, to which June joyfully wished the son a bon appetit and asked him to leave the battle unharmed next time. Kimchi porridge said that he now realized that when he asked June to add onions to kimchi chaj, he put the head of onion jack. Turning his head, the son thought that luck smiled at him too, because instead of being angry at the aristocrats who leave parishioners from other worlds to kill each other in the arena, memories of such good-natured people as June were forever imprinted in his memory, and perhaps, if he had not been nearby at that moment, the son would have become not a brave warrior, but the embodiment of evil. Walking with Nabi through the market in Sector A, Sung Woo noticed that everything here remained as before, although, of course, much has now been destroyed. The son turned towards Aluros and asked him if he would like to eat something else, and he said that he would finish his hot dog first, and then think about it. The son stopped for a second, looking at the filled shelves of the market, and thought that the main thing about the old market was its atmosphere. With the words that the market is more interesting than in the store, and with an offer to buy something else here, he turned to the running Nabi, joyfully shouting about the desire to search for treasures. Examining the contents of each stall in the market, Sun and Nabi again did not find anything that they could like, but suddenly the Aluros noticed something with their peripheral vision and turned around and ran towards that object. Having reached the place, Nabi pointed to something incomprehensible, asking whether Sung Woo liked it. The son asked if it was a shell, and stroking it on top, added that it was the first time he had seen such a huge one. Having examined it more closely, the son suggested that it might not be a jericas, that is, a giant mollusk with which the giants pampered their stomachs. Sung Woo asked the woman next to the counter, apparently selling local goods, for details about this shell, and the answer he received was that she didn't know anything about the shell at all and that her husband had brought this shell here. Sung Woo looked at the woman strangely, saying goodbye to how her husband could bring this jericas here, because she weighs 200 kilograms, no less. After stroking the shell again, Sung Woo quietly said that undoubtedly this majestic jericas had seen a lot and, sharply raising his head and making eye contact with the woman, said that he wanted to buy a jericas, but in response received a firm refusal, reason that it was nothing more than decoration. With a little awkwardness, Sung Woo changed the topic, asking for 10 pieces of mackerel and clams, and when the woman asked why he needed so many mackerels, Sung Woo explained that he had his own diner, albeit a small one. At that very second the situation changed, taking the opposite side, and the woman, pointing her finger at her son's nose and accusing him of being stingy, said that this would not be enough for the diner. Running up to the counter, she began to choose what else to put to her client, and, having finished, handed over a bag of new ingredients, and the son put the jericas on his right shoulder and together with Nabi, they went towards the diner, thanking the nice lady for her cooperation. Having placed it in the middle of the eatery, Sun and Nabi looked at the jericas while Sun thought about the fact that the product is lovely, no doubt about it, but what is the best way to deal with it? Hitting the clam with his fist, the Sun turned to Nabi, suggesting that they first try to at least open it, and he supported the idea. Since it did not open due to the adhering mud, Sung Woo applied a little magic and still opened it. Stunned by what he saw, the son was surprised out loud that the clam scallop was even larger than Nabi, and rolling up his sleeves with a knife in his hands, the son said that since we were talking about a scallop, then it should be cut into thin slices. After cutting off a very thin slice of scallop, dipping it in the sauce and eating it, Sung Woo said with a pleased look that the only thing missing here was soju, a traditional Korean drink somewhat reminiscent of Russian vodka. Looking at the jericas with Nabi, Sun said that this huge clam could be made into clam chowder, that is, an American creamy clam soup that has a creamy taste. With his hands folded over his chest, Sung Woo said that he plans to cook scallops and soju for dinner, and tomorrow he plans to have hangover clam chowder for breakfast. Poking the tip of the knife into the black bag located above the comb, Sung Woo said that it contained a deadly poison, and if someone eats it and does not die, then this means that other poison will not affect him. Squatting down near the open jericas, the son said that even just one glance stung his eyes and that he was already anticipating the amazing effect, and Nabi, with cold sweat on his forehead, asked the son if he was afraid of anything at all. With an ominous smile, the son thought that it would be worthwhile to preserve it, so that even lazy people could eat it. As soon as the son began to butcher, Min appeared at the entrance door of the diner, greeting his teacher and noticing that since the very morning the son had already been doing something unusual. Having taken a closer look at what exactly the son was cutting up, Min noticed that it was the same mollusk that was found in the river and asked if it was really suitable for food. The son, in shock, stood up and pointed to the shell, asked Ming whether the jericas really appeared in the river, and having received Ming's positive nod, he threw away the knife and said that it sounded quite interesting and asked him to tell him in more detail. Ming began to talk about how 2 days ago there were complaints about loud noise in the sewer, and the hunters who arrived at the scene saw a very small crack in the dimension. Sung Woo said with a downcast expression that this meant that the gate might open soon. While Sung and Min were talking about the shell incident, Nabi brought Min a plate on a tray, with a beautiful presentation of cut scallops. Min took the chopsticks to start eating, and the son asked him that the crack that foreshadowed the opening of the gate was found in the sewer pit, to which he received a positive answer. Min added that since the authorities cannot predict when this will all develop into an abnormal situation, they sent the appropriate group, and the owner smiled and said that he had finally found the answer to why Baek Kong Hyuk had not been seen lately. Having grabbed the first slice, Min carefully picked it up and brought it to his face, noticing the excellent cutting abilities, because it is so thin that it is already translucent. Sung Woo said that if so, then this dish is worthy of Min's taste and offered him pepper paste and soy sauce with wasabi, and Min only asked for soy sauce without wasabi. As soon as the owner took the handle of the soy sauce bottle, the son again thought about the crack. People who returned to Earth by a mysterious coincidence, and Jerichas that unexpectedly appeared in the river, because it would be strange to call these events a series of coincidences. So a trembling nerves flashed through the son's head that most likely it was all because of him. Meanwhile, Baek Kang-hyuk, sitting in a sleeping bag, zealously refused his boss's offer to write a letter of resignation. In the end, she got tired of listening to Baek's fuss, and the boss said that if he continued to sit in this sleeping bag, looking like a caterpillar, and grumbling about the fact that he could not write a statement, then she would write a statement for Baek, to which he got angry and grumbled even stronger. Turning her head towards Baek and looking at him with contempt, the girl said that she had been planning to treat Baek with respect for a whole month, but apparently this was impossible. Baek, holding back tears, said that the boss was too cruel to him, because he even gave up his day off to sit in the sewer waiting for a miracle, and in the end he added that this was not at all like the act of a member of the First Order. The girl turned away with a dissatisfied face and asked what the people from the First Order were doing then, and Baek, as if he had been waiting for this very moment, jumped out of his sleeping bag and confidently exclaimed that they were shining and destroying monsters on the air. Still with the same dissatisfied expression on her face, the boss asked Baek why doesn't he just give up this matter and go to TV, and Baek froze in a stupor. Baek climbed back into the sleeping bag, and turning in the other direction from the boss, told her to leave her behind and that he didn't want to talk to her anymore. At this time, the boss silently watched the crack with the thought that although the order's words were not wrong, not knowing how long they should wait did not suit her at all. Looking at Baek, she thought that he was still working, reducing his rest and sleep time, just like his predecessor, who occupied 10th place in the top 100. The girl just reached out to Baek's shoulder, wanting to ask if he would mind if she asked for a replacement team, when a loud noise was heard. Glancing towards the gates, she saw that something strange was happening to them, and most likely they were opening. She shouted about a change in the situation so that the squad had time to prepare. Looking at the voltage crack sensor, the girl, in complete horror, realized that the gate was out of control and its rank exceeded the highest. Falling to her knees, she thought for a second that there was a huge possibility that this city and everything else could easily disappear without a trace. Baek Kang-hyuk approached her from behind and touched her shoulder and said that before the crack gets bigger, someone should enter the gate. Baek glanced at the emergency manual in case of cracks, and immediately returned his gaze to the girl, with whom they simultaneously repeated the contents of the manual, saying that they needed to use a crack stabilizer to stop its expansion and wait until help arrived. Baek happily said that now we need someone who will sacrifice himself, as if offering himself as a candidate, but the girl stopped him, tugging on his shoulder, shouting that there might be a surge in electricity. Baek began to make excuses about Ming's absence, and that if he didn't fix this, then the boss would just be a hindrance, and after remaining silent for a second, Baek said that he would enter the gate with the coordinator to stabilize the crack. Continuing to hold the girl by her fragile shoulders, Baek said that on the outskirts of Changkungkung there was a place called the Warrior's Snack Bar and asked to tell its owner what happened and, as quickly as possible, to bring him here. The girl asked Baek again, and he said that she should just tell the owner his name and ask for help, and also added that this is the only way to survive. The girl ran away in order to fulfill Baek's request, and he took a cigarette out of his pocket and accidentally lost it, but one of the sniper team handed him a whole, just opened pack of cigarettes, with words of admiration for Baek's coolness. Shouting forward, Baek jumped into the crack, and the snipers opened fire and began shouting to each other to hold their positions. Unable to cope with such a huge number of monsters, one of the snipers began to shout that there was no end to the monsters, and shouted about reloading his weapon, and at that time one of the monsters was running straight at him. Sun Woo, who appeared instantly, cut down the entire horde of monsters in a second and after that, like Baek, entered the portal, leaving the snipers in bewilderment and complete shock at what was happening. The soldiers all began to leave the scene together, talking about how they were convinced that the monsters were defeated, but still wanted to decipher the recording to check if there were any escaped monsters. Meanwhile, Baek was thinking that he was almost setting up an energy curtain, and, hearing the stomping of giant monsters passing by, he was worried about whether he was destined to die here. The monsters, standing at the gates, did not understand why there were no changes in them and, out of despair, decided to start knocking on them, while Beck was shocked that the energy curtain was about to be knocked. From the powerful blows of the monsters, fragments of either the gate or the curtain flew in all directions, including towards Beck, who was worried and waiting with hope for his son. One of the fragments turned out to be large enough to be able to throw it away when it fell on Beck, and the sound of Beck's scream in surprise attracted the attention of the monsters. Hiding behind the same wall as before, Beck Kan-hyuk covered his mouth with his hands so as not to make the slightest sound again, and hoped that no one would notice him, but in vain. 3 monsters surrounded him with the words that they had found the one who opened the curtain and decided to crush him so that only a wet spot would remain. But Beck suddenly pulled out pistols from his pockets and opened fire on them. But this did not stop the monsters one bit, and one of them had already raised one leg, preparing to crush Beck, when half of the son's body appeared from the gate. He, taking his sword out of its sheath with a smile on his face, got rid of all the giant monsters in an instant. Beck, watching everything from the side, thought that even giants were no match for some, and earlier he had even taken aim at this guy. Then the son noticed Beck and threw something at him with a question about what this scoundrel was watching there, sitting in his hiding place. After that, Sung-woo looked away towards the bodies of the dead giant monsters, saying that he was not going to kill them, because perhaps they were trying to conquer the earth. Getting to his feet, Sung-woo took a bag filled with something with the words that first of all he would put artifacts and resources in his inventory, and with a smile on his face threw Beck onto his shoulder, saying that he wouldn't talk about this fool either will forget. And at that very moment he abruptly threw him into the gate with the words that the hunters would take care of him there. Meanwhile, in the warrior's diner, Nabi heartrendingly begged the owner for help with the hope that he would come and save him from people taking off his hands and touching his paws, smiling with affection and talking about what a cute cat Nabi is. While Nabi continued to try to get out of the crowd of fans surrounding him, Sung-woo, in complete shock, said that he now understood what would happen if he left Aluros alone. While the son explained to the fans Nabi that this cat is his employee, was stopped by the boss whom Beck sent, taking him by the hand. As it turned out, Sung-woo sensed something was wrong much faster than the girl could reach, and rushed off to help first. Sitting at a table with 2 cups of coffee, the two discussed the situation that had happened, and Sung-woo suggested summing up the results. After that, he said that the daredevil Beck Kan-hyuk entered the crack and sent the boss to Sung for help, and the girl added that the rank of this gate was high, so the situation was emergency, and he needed help immediately. Smiling, the son thought that Beck Kan-hyuk was still good, so they met, and not understanding the reasons for the son's smile, the girl asked him about it, to which he avoided answering, saying that there would be great news soon, so the girl should calm down and breathe out. Turning away, the son thought that it seemed like she hadn't received a call from the branch yet, but in any case, if we talk about an emergency, here it is even more serious. At this time, Nabi continued to diligently fight off people who considered him a fluffy cutie, shouting not to touch his tail. Watching this picture from the side, Sung-woo thought that it felt like a cat cafe, because these people didn't even think about ordering anything, they just decided to visit. When the son got tired of all this, he simply kicked them out the door while they shouted that they couldn't treat the guests so disrespectfully, and the son now answered in a calm voice that it was possible, and closed the door with a calm soul. Still standing at the door, the son turned his head towards the girl and asked her if she was a hunter, and she answered positively, adding to the answer that she was awakened, although she worked in the office. With the thought that this is the prey, Sung-woo stroked Nabi, telling him to rest a little, and after that he began to tie his apron, saying that since they came to the diner, they need to have a snack, and while Beck's employee exclaimed that now the circumstances are not the same, the son, in his defense, said that perhaps everything was already over. Clenching his hand into a fist and putting it to his chest, the son thought about the reason that over these few days the number of visiting hunters had not increased. After all, even if the cooked food effectively improves abilities, everything is spoiled by its unpleasant taste and the fact that it does not bring the body of the person who ate it into shape. Walking to the table, the owner continued to think about that healing dish that worked instantly and therefore was not bad, which means that it would definitely interest both the tired and exhausted hunters of our time. Knocking on the table so that the cups flew up, the son said that this is why he needed money first, after which he told the girl that she probably often gets goosebumps. Sometimes she suffers from chills and symptoms of a cold appear, On that the girl replied that she simply often works late and sleeps on the street from time to time. Looking at her from all sides, Sung-woo said that this is why her body looks like ice, adding that she devotes a lot of time to mental work, but because of this, her neck and shoulders are clogged. Turning his head over his left shoulder and standing at the kitchen table, he told the girl that they had a suitable menu for hypothermic people and asked her to wait. Hostility and the thought that this was complete nonsense ran through the client's thoughts, and the son approached the Jerichas, remembering that he had previously received many of these from giants. Nervously looking at Sung, who was preparing a dish for her, she kept trying to find an answer to the question of why Sung-woo behaves as if he considers this situation a trifle, because when the order itself asks him, he should react completely differently. Looking at the phone screen, she noticed that even from the branch there was no notification about the opening of the gate, which meant that someone had already solved the problem. Turning her gaze back to her son, she immediately began to remember the basic manual for responding to a returnee, which said that you need to be careful and vigilant, as if dealing with explosives, but at the same time respect them as people. Noticing the strange state of the client, the son noticed that apparently she had put her thoughts in order, and at that time she was thinking about whether eating food was part of her responsibilities. Watching the owner cook and noticing a plate filled with a lot of seafood in his hands, the girl asked him about it, and said that it looked delicious. My son confirmed that it was a seafood dish, and said it was called clam chowder, and was a clam chowder soup. To the client's question about where he got such soft meat, and in such quantities, the son answered with a smile that it was Jericha's and the girl had most likely already seen it, but she said that even though she was born in the city, there were no such seafood. I saw it. The Jericha's itself in the back room behind the owner's back, which turned out to be a shell of monsters. The girl instantly changed in her face and mood. Having flared up, the girl abruptly stood up from her chair, slamming the table, just thinking that this little bastard could have thought of feeding the hunter such food. Sung-woo asked in surprise if something had happened, and Baek's employee had just started saying that she was definitely not going to eat the monster when she remembered the management and turned away. With thoughts that if she refused the return dish, then she would be finished, she hesitated and sat back on the chair asking him not to pay attention. At this time, Sung-woo had already fried the garlic, potatoes and bacon, and after adding wheat flour, frying the potatoes and shellfish meat, it was the turn of the broth and milk. Stirring the contents of the pan, the son added the Minotaur's milk, which contains less lactose and more vitamins and fats than usual. After adding the milk, the son continues to fry, using various powers of magic to infuse the ingredients with magic, but must be constantly stirred to avoid burning. Having tasted the dish with a little teaspoon of salt, Sung-woo noticed the wonderful taste of the dish. Having placed the plate with the prepared dish on a tray in front of the huntress, Sung-woo with a smile wished her a bon appetit and asked her to eat slowly, and the girl, in turn, noticed the high speed with which the son was able to cook this. With his hands folded on his chest, the son said that this dish is called clam chowder, but in fact, it is just milk porridge with shellfish meat. After this, the son suggested that the girls sprinkle the dish with parsley, to which she instantly refused, shrouded in fear that it might even be some kind of monster skin. Having tasted the first spoon, the girl felt all the magic and immediately associations arose in her head with the feeling when a frozen body thaws in front of the fireplace in a cold winter. Spoon by spoon, the girl took off her jacket, carefully folding it and putting it on a chair nearby, and when the son asked if she felt better because of the medicinal properties of the dish, she replied that she really felt much better. While the son watched the girl's reaction to the clam chowder, she smiled and thought that for the first time she tried a dish prepared using the ingredients that monsters eat, she really liked it. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, Korean branch, at the hearing regarding the highest level gate, Mr. Baek made excuses to Director Lee Young-hoon, saying that he perfectly understands what he wants to say, but Baek speaks as he sees. Director Lee had just started talking about some unknown monster when Baek immediately interrupted him, saying that the one they were talking about was not an unknown monster at all, but the owner of the diner. Raising his head and looking at Baek, Lee Chong-hong asked him if he understood correctly what Baek was trying to say about how an ordinary diner owner killed dozens of monsters of supposedly the highest level in just 5 minutes. Baek noticed that their level was not supposedly the highest, but absolutely, and also quipped about the broken measuring device. The director lost his temper, calling Baek names and ordering him to stop fussing. Having calmed down and straightened his tie. Lee Chong-hong again turned to the number 21 returnee, that is, Baek Kan-hyuk, asking if it was true that the owner of the warrior diner had killed several dozen monsters of the most dangerous rank. And Baek, yawning, replied that he saw it with his own eyes, and if Lee Hong suspected Baek, then maybe he could just catch the owner of the diner. Putting his hand to his forehead, the director asked Baek if he understood that this was an extraordinary situation, to which Baek shrugged his shoulders and calmly replied that he had no idea. Very angry again, Lee Chong-hong slammed his fist on the table, shouting that a man with unimaginable power was walking around the city. But for Baek this was a common occurrence. Turning to the director with a smile on his face, Baek asked him to think carefully about how this man with unimaginable power had not yet appeared. Baek continued that after arriving on Earth, the director immediately registered Sung as a returnee, and the association has a rule that says not to touch returnees until they wish to, and Lee Young-hong, after hesitating, confirmed all this. He folded his arms across his chest with a smirk on his face, and summed up everything he said earlier with the words that it means that Sung Woo runs a diner and is a decent citizen. Sharply hitting the table with his palm, Baek brought his faces closer to Lee Chong and said that that's why he returned. This is the same. Well, this is the same. Recoiling from the director, Baek finally collected his thoughts and said that the one who had returned was the most calm and proud person, who had no idea of hiding. Leaning his back on the director's desk, Baek voiced his proposal that Sung Woo would not become a potential enemy, and Lee Chong said that the world is not divided into enemies and allies. After this, Lee Chong-hong said that the branch is obliged to assume possible circumstances, that he cannot trust Sung and give him freedom just because he seems kind, that they must provide security and a comfortable life for the townspeople. Everyone said with the same grin that no one denies it, but all the same, all decisions are made by those higher in rank. Baek ended his speech by saying that, in any case, he was only a field agent and judged it this way, and also, emphasizing the importance of these words, asked the secretary to emphasize this. Angry, Lee Chong mentally told Baek that if he thought that he could transfer such a complex matter to another with just one word, then he was very mistaken and that, like in any other country, half of the sector cannot fly apart just because that one returnee made a mistake. Aloud, Lee Chong said only that nothing could be done about it and that he would convey this to the management. And Baek walked away from the table with the words that the director should do as he saw fit and asked if he could now go, explaining himself presence of urgent business. Lee Chong replied that since the matter was complicated then, of course, let him go, because he still had to conduct an investigation, patrol the city, take care of civilians, and Baek said that the director had completely forgotten that he needed to buy land. As he got closer, Baek began to talk about how the strongest returnee of all time now has his own snack bar, which means that even if the land comes to an end, that territory will survive, and this is the reason for the increase in the price of this land in the eyes of Baek. With a rather stupid look and a smile on his face, with the words that this is how it is, because he didn't even think about it, Lee Chong-hong began collecting documents on his desk. Having collected a solid pile, the boss hit Baek Kan-hyuk on the forehead with it as hard as possible, shouting about how Baek could count on such an answer, and repeated his words that the safety of people comes first. Baek began to justify himself by saying that although the protection of citizens is also necessary, in any case, you should first become aware of the integrity of your wallet, to which Lee Chong began to shut him up. Standing at the door of the warrior's diner, the order members asked their leader Min about Kifa about whether this diner was the one run by the returned one, and Min said that although he had already warned many times, he decided to repeat the request to behave politely once again. Clearing his throat into his fist, Min thanked the teacher, saying that if it weren't for him, they would hardly have been intact. Sitting down at the table, Ming said that although they couldn't do anything big, they would try to at least increase his sales. Three were whispering among themselves about the sun. One thought that the sun could defeat 300 to 500 in one fell swoop, another thought that a shaggy, cold-blooded man with a beard would come out, and the third said that in fact the sun really looked like an ordinary diner owner. The only thing that coincided in their opinions was that the sun has a beautiful appearance. Having tried the dish brought by Nabi, everyone was delighted with the taste, and one of the members of the order, turning to Min, said that after tasting this masterpiece, he realized that he would not have been so impressed even if he had seen the explosion of the universe. From an overabundance of bliss, he even shed a couple of tears, saying that he couldn't help himself and that this was an unsurpassed taste. At this time, the son was thinking that he had finally acquired 5 advertising agents for himself, because now these guys would return to the base and talk about his diner, which would interest the rest of the workers. Looking again at one of the members of the order, the son mentally decided that first he should eliminate the unpleasant idea of eating monsters, and when they came to their senses, the son would turn them into people who would no longer be able to eat the same dishes. Walking along a busy street, the son raised his head up and, looking at the sun, thought that yesterday it was cold, but today it was already incredibly hot. After people walking in shorts and t-shirts began to look at the sun, dressed in a long-sleeved shirt and pants, the son began to roll up his sleeves and say that he knew that he was not dressed for the weather. Having finished with the sleeves, the son, looking at the phone, said that that's why he had to check the weather forecast, but his attention was drawn to the building next to which he stopped. It turned out to be a food market. Having entered it, the son began to choose what he wanted, and taking out a blue ice cream on a stick, the son began to remember that 9 years ago there was a noticeable difference between the seasons, and now, the weather is changing after the past month. The son looked at his dripping ice cream with the thought that even at that time the ice cream did not melt as much as it does now. Looking up, the son spoke out loud about his decision to take a day off today, and asked himself where he should start today. Standing near the cinema building, the son, scratching his chin, said that, of course, there is nothing better than cinema. The son looked at his ticket with the thought that he had guessed the time well, because the film starts in 10 minutes. But his attention was distracted by people who were also at the market, and shouting some phrases advertising their goods. The son looked away at the counter in front, where Nabi stood with his newly found girlfriend. At the phone again, the son noticed that time was running out, and that he would need to ask Nabi after the film ended. A blue-haired girl walking around the market noticed somewhere nearby a huge cat looking at the counter in front of him, which turned out to be Nabi, and with great interest and desire to get to know him, she approached Aluros from behind. Blue-haired Unha put 2 fingers to her head, as if communicating with her mother, and asked her what she should do. The girl's mother told her that there is nothing special about friends, but if you benefit from them, then you can be friends with them until you get tired of them. Unha was happy about the solution to her problem and, full of confidence, walked closer to the counter, asking him to sell her 1 chicken kebab. After she was given the order, Un turned to Nabi and asked him, calling him Mr. Kitty, if he would like to treat himself, to which Nabi replied in bewilderment that he did not take food from people he did not know. The surprised girl decided to offer him ordinary friendship in this case. Nabi asked again, and the girl was already upset and, with a drooping face, decided that he did not want to. Nabi immediately jumped up with joy, saying that he was very happy to finally have an earthling friend. The girl smiled and said that she was also glad to have her new cat friend, and again handed him the kebab, which Nabi accepted with gratitude this time. Having bitten a little, Nabi jumped again, this time from how delicious it was, and asked Unha about the effect this kebab gives. From her eyes, Aluros realized that there was no effect from simple human food, which is why he was upset, and the girl asked if food needed anything other than taste. Nabi said with a downcast look, Unha says that the lack of effect is a sign of a disqualified dish, and if Aluros eats it, he will become a fat cat. Unha didn't understand anything and said that you can eat so as not to gain weight, but Nabi still refused. The girl did not take the kebab that Nabi was pulling and repeated her mother's words that concentration and abstinence are the most important things, and after that she handed the kebab to Aluros. She also added that all food in large quantities is very harmful to the body, but if you eat a little, then everything will be fine. After that, Unha said that experience is also equally important, that they say you need to eat a lot of delicious food in order to study well, and to grow, and to succeed in sports. And Nabi decided that all this is the effects of delicious dishes. The last thing Un said was that a monotonous diet is harmful, and Nabi asked again and jumped away from her with a kebab in his hand. Having taken another bite, Nabi melted again from the wonderful taste and jumped again, and the joyful Unha invited the so-called Mr. Kitty to go eat next time to the place she pointed to with her finger, to which Aluros readily agreed. At this time, on the roof of a multi-story building, an angry Baek Khan Hyuk accidentally called the director a damn bald head out loud, to which Min O'Keefe asked Baek to shut up because no one would listen to him, to which Baek was surprised that he said it out loud. After that, he completely lost his temper, shouting that the boss himself was going to check the situation with the restored Sector A and the condition of the crack in the sewer. Min, throwing the ash off his cigarette, said that he was already tired of seeing these faces of important people, because even when he was on duty, there was no peace from them. Beck shouted again, saying that he was talking about the president of the World Association of Hunters, and Min, irritated by Beck's behavior, said that it was necessary to restore order in advance. After which, Beck stamped his foot, swore at the president's gang, calling them damn gangsters, and said that not only was he stuck in the sewer, but it turns out he had committed a crime. Having calmed down a little, Beck turned to Min, declaring that he left the destruction of the search to him, because it suited him better, and Min confirmed that he was better at surveillance, adding that Beck, in turn, was good at patrolling. With a pitiful look and some envy, Beck looked down at how the others were watching movies on their day off, going on dates, while he, poor man, was busy with patrol. After this, Beck, placing his hand on his collarbones, used his abilities to disguise himself. Ming and the detachment of the First Order also went to their destination.